Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast Inside the Wrongful Conviction of Daniel Holtzclaw. This is episode 13, and we are covering Sherry Ellis's trial testimony. Um, Today we are going to read Detective Kim Davis's part of the trial testimony. So, welcome to anyone in chat. Um, and does anyone have any announcements or anything, or shall we jump right into it?
I only have one, and that's in the Avery case. Kathleen Zellner has apparently filed. I'm guessing it's Kathleen. It's not signed, but it appears that she has asked for some scientific testing of some type. We don't really
Wow, the
know
most,
where.
yeah.
So trying to get the document. It's probably going to be tomorrow, but we'll see. That's all I got.
All right. Anyone else?
No, I say let's get to it.
All right. Sounds good. So, this section of the testimony is from the 23rd day of November 2015. Let's see. I think that's day 12 of the jury trial. And I am going to read Kim Davis's part. Susan will be reading Prosecutor Galen Giger. Jack is going to be Scott Adams, and Sherri will be reading disgraced Judge Timothy Henderson's part. Rhonda had some dental surgery done, so she is pushing buttons and listening in. So let's.
I can
Yeah.
only say, at the risk of her beating the crap out of me, I'm not saying that Rhonda likes to talk, but I just can tell right now she's wanting to talk, like bad, but she can't. Just say it.
She might
Okay.
be asleep already.
Yeah.
I doubt it. But I had to tease her a little bit.
I'm awake.
All right. So this is 85 pages, you guys. That's why I want to go ahead and jump right into it.
That's not too bad.
Let's see. So we're going to start with line. I don't know. Do you guys want to swear in the witness?
We don't have to.
Okay.
No,
Let's start with
Davis. Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with line 21. With
22.
Mr. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Detective, can you describe for the jury how it is that you became aware of Sherry Ellis's possible involvement with Officer Holtzclaw?
She was in the packets that Detective Gregory was given, but he was scheduled, had already been scheduled for a 2-week vacation, and he gave me her name to see if I could find her while he was on vacation.
I don't know that anyone's ever asked this question. At some point during the pendency of the investigation into Officer Holtzclaw's activities, was Detective Gregory transferred to another division of the Oklahoma City Police Department?
Yes.
What division did he get transferred to, ma'am?
Homicide.
And is he currently a homicide detective?
Yes.
And as a result of that, did you take over as the investigation progressed more of a lead role in a lot of the information was obtained subsequent to his either vacation and or transfer?
Yes.
In that regard, ma'am, when you receive this packet of information, is that the same type of information that comes from running Varuna checks to see individuals that Officer Holtzclaw had ran?
Yes.
Once you received that information from your lieutenant from Musney?
Correct.
All right. Once you received that information, what did you do?
Then I started trying to locate Sherry.
And you sounded just like her. And tell the jury about the efforts you undertook to try to do that, please.
I went to several addresses that were either vacant or she didn't live there. I called several different phone numbers that we had. Finally, I looked up on Facebook and looked at her associates and was able to find one of her associates, one of her one of her friends, I guess, in Facebook that was in Varuna. And I called him. I think it was a brother, and I told him I was looking for her, and he said he would have her call me, and she called me.
Detective, this may be somewhat self-evident, but I want to ask, since you brought up Facebook, you heard some testimony about Facebook in regards to this case previously, in regards to Shadarion Hill. Is that correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, is Facebook something that the Detective Bureau does and utilizes on occasion when trying to locate individuals?
Yes.
And so whenever you incorporated attempts to look at someone's potential Facebook page and or friends, is that something you've done in other cases?
Yes.
Ma'am, based upon your understanding of the case, is that different than what Officer Holtzclaw was doing whenever he used Facebook to contact Shadarion Hill?
Yes.
Okay. Did you engage in conversations with Sherry Ellis via Facebook and send her messages about wanting to talk to her and things like that?
No.
So explain exactly what you did with Facebook.
Well, I sent her a message on Facebook to contact me.
The court.
Who are we talking about?
Sherry Ellis, Your Honor.
Okay.
What was he daydreaming of being in his chambers later or what? He got lost.
Got
Sorry.
lost.
Can't help it.
16.
But I never got anything. She never contacted me. So I looked at her list of friends and while I ran her friends through Varuna to see if I had any good information on a friend, one of her friends was her brother. So, and I had a good phone number for him in Varuna, so I called him. I think I called him at work.
And did you get a hold of him?
I did.
And did he lead you to information that was relevant in helping you locate Miss Ellis?
He said he'd have her call me.
And did she?
Yes.
Okay. And then tell me then about that. The subject matter of that conversation and what you did next.
I I called her and told her what I was investigating, and she told me what she started kind of talking fast and said that she was a victim and gave me some of the details. And so I scheduled an interview with her because I didn't want to do that type of interview over the phone.
Where did your interview with her take place?
In the we have interview rooms at the sex crimes office.
So she came down to the police department?
Yes.
And when did it take place, ma'am?
August 5th of 2014.
Whenever you received the packet of information that led you to identify her as a potential party that might have information relevant to your investigation, when were the contacts that you were able to locate based upon the Varuna search? When was she searched in Varuna? Jesus.
She was searched a couple of times in Varuna 4 times, but on just 2 different dates, May 7th and May 8th.
With that information, had you obtained the CIU information as well at that point?
Yes.
Did it show a contact as well? Not just to mention someone running in Varuna, but actually running for warrants?
2.
Okay. What were those?
Both of them were on 5/7, but different shifts, because the shift overlaps into after midnight.
I'm going to ask you some more about those in a moment. But then, so whenever you made contact with Ms. Ellis and she came to the police department, were you already thinking that you wanted to talk about an event that happened in May then with her?
Well, yes, but
On those 2 dates?
yeah, but I didn't tell her that.
Yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
That was my next question. So tell me how that went. Did you interject the May contact, or tell me how that?
No.
The questions you asked her and her responses in that regard?
She already knew because of the phone conversation why she was there. So I got background information, which I do with all my victims. And then I told her to tell me what happened. She didn't know the date that it happened.
Okay.
And then she told me what happened.
Ma'am, you heard testimony here in the courtroom. Is that correct?
Yes.
You also had the opportunity to hear her testify at the preliminary hearing.
Yes.
Is essentially what she testified today to this jury what she told you during your interview in August?
Yes.
After she gave you that information, ma'am, did you take some further steps in attempting to investigate what Ms. Ellis had told you?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, the first thing that we did, Detective Gregory and I took her and had her drive us the route that she went and where Officer Holtzclaw stopped her, and then where Officer Holtzclaw took her, and we took pictures.
And can you tell the jury, again, what that route consisted of based on what she told you?
She was, to get exact, because she told me exactly. She left her house, and then she walked to Highland, and then she went north, and then she got stopped on Highland where the oral sodomy happened, and then he drove her north, and then he went down a dead end street east, hopped the curb, went to the abandoned school, and parked behind a building.
Is there, in fact, a school that's been boarded up and no longer in use in that vicinity?
Yes.
Do you know the name of the school, ma'am?
I think it's Creston Hills.
All right. Can I get some exhibits, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Ma'am, 272, 277, 78, and 84 have already been introduced into evidence, correct?
Correct.
Are those photographs you took?
Yes. Detective Gregory and I did.
I'm going to show you some other ones. I'll hand you 270, 279, 282, 273, 274, 275, 276. Also have 271, then 280, 281, 283, 285, 286, and 287. Would you look at these photographs, ma'am? See if they're consistent with your memory of the way the scene appeared on the day that you took those photographs.
Yes.
These photographs would have been taken in August
Yes.
of 2014. Offer those exhibits.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. States Exhibits 270, 279, 282, 273, 274, 275, 276, 271, 280, 281, 283, 285, 286, and 287 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, 270 shows essentially the intersection of 18th and Highland, right?
Correct.
Is that the location where Ms. Ellis told you the initial contact occurred?
Yes.
Okay. Did she give some descriptors about that location, ma'am, whenever you interviewed her?
Yeah, she said it was by a crepe myrtle tree.
Okay, so when you went to that location, were you looking for a crepe myrtle tree?
Yes.
271, what's that?
The biggest bush there is a crepe myrtle.
When you realized that, did you believe you had the right location?
Yes.
272 is another photograph. That one's already been introduced, but is that just another of the same tree?
Correct.
A little closer to it.
Right.
273, are you oriented with that?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
Go back to the other one.
Yes, ma'am.
There we are south of the tree facing north.
Okay. So this is Highland Street
Right.
that you're looking northbound on.
And the street sign, you can barely see it as 18th and Highland.
All right. But that's facing north on Highland.
Right.
And the crepe myrtle tree is on the
West side.
west side of the street.
Right.
Here is the crepe myrtle tree on the... Now, you're looking the other direction.
Right. We're north of it facing south there.
And that's just showing the way Highland appears going north and south.
Correct.
Ms. Ellis had told you that the contact happened there. And what did she say? What had she told you happened at that location?
She said that's where he drove up behind her. She was walking.
Judge, I would just object to anything she may have said as hearsay.
Sustained.
Ma'am, based upon the sequence of events, did she give you information that then caused you to look for a dead-end street close by?
Yes.
Okay, and what had she told you? And why were you looking for a dead-end street?
I object to anything she may have told her as hearsay.
Judge, it's not for the truth. It's why this detective then took the next series of photographs that she took.
Well, I'm going to sustain the objection as to the form of your question. You got a compound question.
All right. Did she give you additional information after what she told you happened at the crepe myrtle to look for other identifying characteristics or different types of streets around that location?
Yes.
And did you do that? Did you look for more streets?
I did.
Okay. What was the next street that you looked for based on what she told you?
A dead end street.
Okay. And were you able to find one in that location?
Yes.
States 274. What is that street, ma'am?
It's 18th, Northeast 18th.
And it appears that yellow sign says what?
Dead end.
All right. And when I zoom in like that, ma'am, what's that? Can you tell the jury what you found at that end of that street?
The abandoned school.
Okay. I'm going to show you 277. What are we seeing at 277?
Well, to the right of a little gym, playground equipment, and to the left are you can see the buildings of the school.
Specifically as to that photograph, ma'am. Is there something that Ms. Ellis told you that was significant in your investigation as to the way that street is set up?
He drove over the curb.
And is that consistent with what you found at the location?
Yes.
Ma'am.
How would they? What's that mean?
Yeah.
Went to the location and found that
There's a
he
curb
drove
there?
over the curb. What the
Yeah.
hell?
Makes no sense.
That's weird. Okay, sorry.
Ma'am, show you now in this photograph that you took right there. What are you standing in that? Where are you standing in that?
In the middle of the circle.
Okay, so there's just 1 second. I'm showing you 269. What's 269?
It's a Google overview of that area.
And it's essentially showing the location of the school as well as that dead-end cul-de-sac?
Right.
And it's bordered by Highland and Miramar, is that right?
That's correct.
Is that an accurate depiction of the way that the streets are laid out and the location of the school?
Yes.
Offer states 269.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's exhibit numbers 269 will be admitted.
Ma'am, when I look at 269, this building right here, what is it?
That's the school.
This street right here, what is that?
Miramar.
When I come this direction, what street is this?
Highland.
This street is, what's that right there?
That's the dead end of Northeast 18th.
If I look, I'm sorry, that cul-de-sac, do you see this right here?
Yes.
What is that?
That's the playground equipment.
So if I go back to 277, is that the playground equipment?
Correct.
All right. Now, when I put 275 on the telestrator, are you still on that cul-de-sac?
Yes, just another view of the curb.
Okay. Are you just looking a little different direction as you stand in that circle cul-de-sac?
Looking northeast.
Is this part of the abandoned school?
Yes.
276. Are you still on the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Are you essentially just kind of turning and taking different shots to try to get a panoramic view?
Correct.
All right. Again, are those buildings there part of the abandoned school as well as the closed school?
Yes.
May I just interject here? I'll stop at line 17.
Mm-hmm.
Why has he spent all this time? It's absolutely stupid. He could have shown a couple of overviews with a couple of pointers, done. But he spent, what, 10 minutes here walking around in a circle, having her talk about all these roads laid out.
He wanted to keep saying abandoned school as many times as
he did.
He wants to keep saying that, and he wants to, he can't really rely on the AVL like they do in other cases because it doesn't really match their narrative. So this is kind of a diversion, I think, because they're going to say that he took her over by that building and raped her when in fact his car stopped just past the point where he jumped the curb. So I guess that's what they're doing. It's interesting.
It is interesting. It's just, and it's ridiculous. More ridiculous bullshit. Pardon my French.
While we're stopped though, I found a couple other things kind of interesting in the beginning, or things I didn't know about. I didn't know that he contacted her brother. I thought he contacted. I can't think what
wasn't it Vernon Starr or something like that?
Yes. Is that her brother, Vernon Starr?
It was a cousin or something, or a friend.
I thought so too. So I'd never heard that before. I can't think what the other thing was that was weird that I hadn't heard before. I'll have to scroll back when we finish. It was right in the beginning. Anyone else have any observations so far?
I'm going to, it's kind of late now, but I'm going to upload all of these exhibits into Sherry Ellis's room in Discord. And
Okay.
if you guys want to, you can follow along if you want to look at the pictures, because they're really pointless. Like Joffrey said, there's no point in these pictures.
Right. All right. Well, let's carry on then. Line 17, Susan.
Yep.
Based upon what Ms. Ellis had told you, where did you go next in taking photographs to try to document the location of where this happened?
We drove over the curb.
Okay.
And drove through the field and went east and then turned north behind those buildings that you see.
Ma'am, as you traveled that direction, did you take additional photographs?
Yes, we did.
And first of all, do you see this right here?
Right. Yes.
Do you know what that is?
I think it's some type of electrical or boxes or...
Put 279 on the screen. Does that show the same item just now in a close-up view?
Yes.
Ma'am, I want to show you now if you continue on 278. What's that now?
We got east of the electrical boxes and looked back west, and you can see the cul-de-sac.
So once you get into that field area, the cul-de-sac is again northeast.
18th.
18th Street. Okay, you're basically looking back in the direction of travel.
Correct.
States number 282. Do you recognize what?
Yeah. Yes, that's one of the...
That is what that is?
One of the abandoned buildings.
As you drive on in that same general direction, ma'am.
This is where north is to the right. This is the building that he went behind.
280. Is that just another location looking as you get in amongst the buildings?
Right.
All right. Ma'am, I'm going to hand you number 268. And if you recognize what that is.
Yes.
What is that?
This is the path that Officer Holtzclaw traveled to get to the school.
Is that consistent with what Ms. Ellis had told you about the path that he had taken or where he'd gone?
Yes.
And
well,
is that
of
the
course
reason
it's
that you're out
consistent.
there?
What is this? I'm sorry.
Right.
What is this? This is the path that Officer Holtzclaw traveled to get to the school. I mean, is that consistent with what? I mean,
Ellis is in the car, right? Telling them where to go, supposedly.
Yeah, it sure would be nice if we had a video recording or an audio recording of that conversation.
Audio.
Then we would know. Mm-hmm. We would know exactly what was going on. But at this point, in other cases, they're using the AVL instead of just a map with a line saying direction of travel. But they, like I said, they can't do that in this because...
Did they take this many photos with these other alleged victims?
It seems like each one had quite a few photos as far as when you look at Brian Bates' podcast at holtzclawtrial.com. When you look at the podcast's webpage, he has all the supporting documents, and it does seem like there are quite a few photos, but I don't think they introduced that many photos for other accusers. They would.
I just didn't remember that many.
Yeah. Well, when they can get the accuser to say direction of travel that's pretty close to the AVL, which for people who don't know what that is, it's the GPS that tracks the car. And it pings every 5 seconds when the car is
Right.
moving. Anyway, yeah, they can't really do that with Sherry Ellis. They need to create a diversion.
I think it's interesting here that Davis says that she went behind this building. Well, that building faces Miramar, and I would not call that behind the building. It's more in front of it. The only thing between Miramar and that building is that tree, right? As I recall.
I'm having a hard time right now imagining in my mind what was the front of that building, as what would have been considered the front side of that building. So, I mean,
The
it may
front
be.
side of the front side of the building is actually on 19th, Northeast 19th. So around the corner is actually the front side of the building.
So that's
Well, I
like the
guess it
side of
sounds
it,
more
right?
rapey to say behind the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. That was the point. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
clear view of the traffic going up and down Miramar and 6 or 7
And the houses
houses
across the
the
street.
street.
Right.
But
Yeah.
there is that baby tree that,
Yeah.
would block a stick figure.
Yeah.
Jesus.
God.
This is terrible. Where
Let's
are we
see.
even?
Line 15.
Thanks, Jack.
And is
Yeah.
that the reason that you're out there taking these photographs?
Yes.
Offer 268.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit 268 will be admitted.
Again, it may be evident from how you described it, Detective, but to show the general path, you've got initial stop at the bottom right of the screen. And that's at the area of between 17th and 18th and Highland.
Yes.
Is that where the crepe myrtle tree is?
Yes.
Is
It's
the
not
direct?
between 17th and 18th Street.
No, it's on 18th, right?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Oh, I lie. It is between 17th and 18th. It's on Highland. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Bad
Okay.
information.
Is the direct line of the direction that Ms. Ellis told you the officer traveled with her?
Yes.
And north of the playground, next to those buildings, and then the building you said, it comes to a stop. You have location of second assault. Is that your understanding of what she described to you?
Yes.
And did you find a location consistent with that?
Yes.
Ma'am, in regards to that then, the corner of this building where the turn is, where you're going, I guess is that east and then turn north?
Yes.
States 281. Can you describe to me what that location is?
That's us north looking back south, where he would have turned to come behind the building.
Uh-huh. And what's the car doing there? How'd that get there?
That's our detective car. That's what we were driving in.
All right. The location of that car, ma'am, is that consistent with the view that if you would be in the car on States 283 with what you would be seeing?
Yes.
So that's looking north.
Yes.
285. Why'd you take that photograph?
That's where his car was parked. We parked our car where his car was parked when the assault took place.
Okay. 286. Are you backing up from that area?
Right. Just getting a different view of it.
287. There is a tree right there, right here. is this just another photograph of that tree?
Right. And from where the car is kind of showing what you would see that way, how the tree blocks the houses and stuff. Oh, bullshit.
Uh-huh. And then 284 is another photograph of the same thing. Is that right?
Correct.
Ma'am, when I go back to states 269, the Google map, and 268 doesn't go all the way over to where Miramar is. Do you agree?
Right.
269 does show that.
Correct.
Would you agree? So I don't know what time of year this was taken, but does it appear that is the tree? It just doesn't have leaves on it.
Yes.
And then so the jury understands why you were taking those photographs. It appears that there are some houses. That there are some houses over to the east of where that tree and that building is, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ma'am, we've heard some testimony about Miramar, and I think you've actually seen some maps. Does this road travel on north across 23rd Street and up to where the bus barn is?
Yes.
If you go south on Miramar from here, what does the road turn?
Yeah, there's quite a sharp turn.
And what's that? Have you learned in this investigation kind of some slang name for that turn?
Oh my God.
It's called Dead Man's Curve.
So Miramar is North South Street at this location, but eventually, if you go a few blocks further, it turns more east-west. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. Detective, you'd mentioned earlier that Ms. Ellis had told you that Officer Holtzclaw, I'm sorry, maybe you didn't mention this. You told me that you knew Officer Holtzclaw had ran Ms. Ellis on May 7th and on May 8th, correct?
Through Varuna or CIU.
Through Verena?
Yes.
And did she give you any information about that, or did she know whether she'd been run?
Yes, she knew that he ran her and she had warrants.
Go back and talk about that for a minute. I'm going to hand you States 294 and ask if you can identify what 294 is, please.
It's the Varuna log.
And does it have the 4 different times that you indicated?
It does.
All right, offer 294.
No objection, Your Honor.
States Exhibit 294 will be admitted.
Ma'am, you heard Ms. Ellis testify yesterday about the time of day that her memory was that she thinks this happened. Do you remember that?
Yes.
In your investigation, did you uncover a different time than what she testified to yesterday?
Well, she thought it happened before midnight, but it actually started at 0:57, which is almost 1 a.m.
And that's documented by the Varuna contacts, correct?
Correct.
As well as AVL when we get there in a few minutes. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Ma'am, on 29457 at 57 minutes after midnight, it shows DH 1782 running Sherry Louise Mitchell Ellis, Sherry Ellis, through the Varuna system, correct?
Yes.
And it also shows on 57 that at 1923, is that 7:23 p.m.?
Yes.
That he runs her again.
Yes. So that would be his next shift.
Okay, so he would have gone off working second shift at 2 o'clock,
Right.
and he would have been back on again the next day starting at 4 o'clock.
Right.
And so at 7:23, it would be the next shift, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, then I noticed the next entry has him running or at least the next highlighted entry where Ms. Ellis's name appears, has him running it on 5/8. Is that correct?
Right.
1625 is 4:25 in the afternoon.
Correct.
Did you find that through ABL or through any reports that Officer Holtzclaw had come in contact again with Ms. Ellis at 7:23 on 5/27, 7:23 p.m., and or on at 4:25 on 5/8? Can he be any more confusing? Jesus.
He likes to do that.
Yep.
He
Yeah.
did not. He did not.
There's no dispatch call where he's there or anything? Nothing? Nothing that would corroborate that?
Nothing.
Additionally, ma'am, at the bottom of States 294, it shows that he ran Sherry Ellis again on 5/8, this time at 23. That's 11:43 p.m. Is that right?
Correct.
So, still the same shift as the 4:25 Varuna run, but running her again later that night, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, tell me what Varuna shows for an officer.
It shows if anybody's ever made a police report.
Okay. Was it significant to you based upon what Ms. Ellis had told you had happened that in this case, well, scratch that question. Let me ask another question. Up until this point, ma'am, had you found Officer Holtzclaw running any of the ladies who had made allegations against him multiple times on multiple shifts?
No.
Is it significant to you as a detective as to why a police officer would run somebody through Varuna without coming in contact with them as a patrol officer to try to, like, the normal reasons for it?
Yes.
What's significant about it to you as a detective in this case?
He's looking to see if she's made a report.
Objection, Your Honor.
In addition, speculation. In addition to the Varuna run, ma'am, did you also have opportunity to review the CIU logs regarding Mr. Holtzclaw's interaction with Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Can I hand you States 291 and 292 and ask if you recognize those?
Yes.
What are they?
The CIU logs for May 7th, 2014.
And does it show Ms. Ellis being run? And are they accurate based upon your memory of retrieving this information from the archives of the police department?
Yes.
Offer States 291, 292, Your Honor.
No objection.
States Exhibit 291 and 292 will be admitted.
Ma'am, in regards to 291, this is the log for 5/7 of 2014, correct?
Yes.
Is that the date that Ms. Ellis had told you? And again, well, let me rephrase the question once again. Is that the date that you believe that Officer Holtzclaw came in contact with Ms. Ellis and traveled to the school?
Yes.
This is the second page of that log, is that right?
Yes.
When I go over to the time where this page of the log was begun, it shows 011. Is 11 minutes after midnight?
Yes.
And then these would again show all the different officers calling in different individuals to the crime information dispatchers.
Correct.
When I get down to Charlie 45,
Yes.
Sherry Ellis, black female, shows a date of birth there, correct?
Correct.
And does it show that she has some outstanding warrants?
3 city warrants.
When you found that information, ma'am, was that consistent with what Ms. Ellis had told you about acknowledging she had warrants to the officer?
Yes.
Ma'am, similarly, in the other cases involving the alleged victims you had investigated up to this point, had you found multiple times that Holtzclaw had run them through a CIU log?
No.
In this case, did you find that he had run her again?
Yes.
What day, if you recall, did you see as far as the log goes? Did he run her again?
Same day, but his next shift.
All right. When I look then, ma'am, again, this page, 291, started at 11 minutes after midnight, correct?
Correct.
Consistent with states number 294, Officer Holtzclaw was back on duty in the evening hours, afternoon evening hours of 5/7, correct?
Correct.
States exhibit number 292 is again a log for 5/7 of 2014. The dispatcher did not fill in a page number on this, did she?
No.
And when I go over here, it doesn't actually show that she filled in a time, but this page started, is that correct?
That's correct.
But if you look at the second entry on this, ma'am, does it show Charlie 45?
Yes.
And does it show that this is, do you see the PS and the BR?
Yes.
And there's a P there?
Yes.
What does that mean?
He called by phone.
Ma'am, in your investigation, had you found other occasions where Officer Holtzclaw, as it's documented in the CIU log, had used his phone to check on someone?
No.
And in all the other cases, how'd he do it?
Radio.
But that's what the P means, is by phone?
Yes.
And as a result of that, ma'am, is there a recording of, like we've heard on other victims, of him talking to the dispatcher?
No, there's not.
They don't record it if they call it on the phone?
No.
When I get to running it on a cross, it shows a black female, it shows a date of birth, and then the dispatcher is written in what?
Info from last night.
Do you know what that means?
He would have had to say, I ran her last night, for her to write that down.
Okay. Is that significant to you? Not only the fact that he's running her again on his next shift, but then this is what goes into that?
Yes.
Okay. Explain to me the significance as the detective in this case.
Well, he's checking to see if she took care of her warrants.
Why would that be significant to you?
Oh
God.
my God.
Damn it.
She is dumber than a post, man.
I got to tell you, and it's scary, and I really don't mean any offense, I swear to God, but you really are doing her well. You sound like her. Not every
God,
sentence and every word, but you've got her down pat. I'm not kidding. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I can just see her sitting there. Well, yeah, he's checking to see if she took care of the warrants. I'll show you how I do it.
It sounds like she's gone to the Galen Giger School of Fiction Writing.
Yeah, I mean, it's purely speculation, and I don't understand why Scott Adams is not raising immortal hell about it. She doesn't know that at all.
I don't remember reading this part of the testimony and Sherry's part of the trial before. I mean, I'm sure that I've read sections of it looking for something, but it's interesting. Oh, as a side note, Daniel's mom said the jurors were having a hard time staying awake.
I bet they were.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you all can feel my eye roll from every time I exasperate the breath out. I'm trying my best. I could mute, but I really don't want to do that. But
No, it's all right. We like to hear your exasperation.
it's crazy. It's and the way he handles dates and times it's insane. He could easily simplify that. Easily. All this could have went up on even a spreadsheet, just a minor one, to have clarified all that, but he keeps repeating these dates and times, and then he'll correct it, which makes it even more confusing.
Yeah, it's just horrible the way he speaks.
It really is.
You know,
I mean,
I feel like that's intentional.
It is. I
because-
agree with you.
You know, even if he had a well thought out sequence of events to question the detectives about, it would still be very difficult for the jury to wrap their minds around this case and assimilate every accuser into the big picture, because it's a lot of information. But you know, he does this circular kind of questioning, and then he does this kind of talk about this, and then something else, and then go back to the three things before
and repeat it and repeat it. It's really irritating.
So, you know, if someone's trying to figure out, the Varuna search, or the CIU, or any of that, and just understand what those things mean, and then he jumps back 4 steps before, it's a mind bender.
Well, and I think that, before we continue, I think that, and I know Scott Adams had a lot on his plate. I get it, and the people help him, but I think it would have behooved him to have explained this clearly, and even if he had to re-explain it a few times as they started out this process of what these different things are and why they're important. And I don't think he really did that. I mean, I think there's some instruction, but I think, you start hearing Varuna and CIU and ABL, and it all just becomes a jumble. And it's just, I think it was totally on purpose by Giger.
Well, it absolutely was on purpose. And, these cases, and you see more and more of them, where they join all of these cases together. This should be 13 cases. I mean, if they broke them up into, even 3 different accusers at a time, but they would have lost some of their victims had they done that.
Oh, I agree.
They had to join them because they could have never brought Janie Liggins along for the ride. There was
they had to pile. He knew he had to pile on, and that's exactly what he did. And I just, that's another thing. The state allowing that to happen that many at one time. I've said it all along. It's too much. It's too much for one single jury to deal with. Sorry.
And it's
absolutely
too much for,
agree with that.
It's too much for defense counsel too, because all the investigation that has to go into it, you're getting discovery, in batches. And Oklahoma County has this tactic, and maybe all prosecutors that are shady do this, where you ask for this, and this, and discovery, and they duplicate stuff that they've already given you, and they jumble
and mix it all in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, dirty.
And so
dirty.
Pool. So it is dirty because it makes one of the attorneys, or I don't know that they had any assistants besides Brian Bates was working his ass off. It makes them have to go through it and see Oh, what do we already have that? We already have that. But you have to look through every single page to make sure that you're not missing something. And it's just dirty.
And cross-check, and yeah, it's ridiculous. It's
Anyway,
disgusting.
That too.
yeah. All right. Shall we carry on?
Please.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. Why would that be significant to you?
Because he would be able to hold those warrants over her head.
In the course of your investigation, did you learn information from other victims where Officer Holtzclaw would contact them subsequently and ask them if they'd taken care of their warrants and done those types of things?
Yes.
Do you remember which other ladies had indicated that type of thing had happened?
Shardarion Hill,
Oh my God.
Anyone else?
Tabitha Barnes.
I'm going to hand you States 293, ma'am, and ask you if you recognize what 293 is.
Yes.
What is it?
The CAD call.
Corresponding to the initial traffic stop in the early morning hours of May 7th?
Right.
All right. Is it an accurate stop reflecting his contact at beginning at 18th and Highland?
Yes.
Offer States 293.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's exhibit number 293 will be admitted.
Ma'am, when I look at State's exhibit number 293, we've got 5-7 and approximately 57 minutes. Not approximately 57 minutes and 22 seconds after midnight. Not
Correct.
approximately. 57 and 22. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't read that right. God. Is that consistent with the Varuna? The first Varuna run that Officer Holtzclaw conducted on Sherry Ellis?
Yes.
This shows a traffic stop, and we've talked about that, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Ellis was not driving a car.
No, she wasn't.
And States 293 does not show that he ran a tag number like we see if there was a car involved, correct?
No, it doesn't show that.
Location shows to be Northeast 18th and Highland, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Is that consistent with what Ms. Ellis had told you?
Yes.
This call shows that it was closed on 5/7 at 1:18:54 a.m., correct?
Correct.
This one shows it doesn't say VisiNet interface. It has, is that a dispatcher's name?
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means he closed the call over the radio.
And ma'am, have you had the opportunity to obtain the radio traffic in this case?
Yes.
And I'll ask you about it in a moment, but was that consistent with what you found? Is that in fact the dispatcher is the one who called this call? Oh, good Lord. I need 1 second here.
Okay.
I'll read for Susan for a second.
I think the verdict is coming in on maybe on the Crumley case.
Oh,
Oh.
is it really?
I thought you had stepped away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I had that window open.
Well, let
There's
us
something
know when
happening
it
in
comes
the
in.
Which case?
Crumley, the father.
Crumley of the shooter, the school shooter.
Oh, okay.
His parents both got tried
Yeah.
for buying the gun for him and not getting him mental health. And I don't know. I didn't keep up with that trial.
I didn't either, but I remember hearing about it.
I watched quite a bit of the mother's, but I didn't watch a little bit of the dad's trial.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let us know.
Okay, what well, I
14.
Line
muted it.
14. Line
Go with
14.
14 again. Try
Okay.
that again.
Okay, because God, he's hard to
I
read.
know.
And I'll ask you about it in a moment. But was that consistent with what you found? Is that in fact a dispatcher is the one who closed this call out?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you this because I don't want to miss it. In reviewing the CAD call on 293, we've heard before about 10 codes whenever you're going to transport someone to another location. Do you remember that?
I do.
What's the 10 code?
1014.
All right. And looking at State's Exhibit number 293, did Officer Holtzclaw, let me rephrase, did the dispatcher document that she was told Officer Holtzclaw is going 1014 or transporting someone to another location?
No.
Is that significant to you in your investigation?
Yes.
Why?
Because he transported her somewhere else and didn't tell dispatch.
According to her. Are there
Yeah.
protocols that are to be followed whenever transporting someone?
Yes.
And what are those protocols? Well, what do they include?
You're supposed to let dispatch know when you're going, and if you have a member of the opposite sex, you're supposed to give your starting mileage. Then when you arrive at the location, you're supposed to tell dispatcher that you've arrived and where you're at, and you're supposed to give the dispatcher your ending mileage.
And, ma'am, is the reasons for that the same reasons you've testified before as to why those policies are in place, those procedures are in place?
Yes.
Do you show on here, ma'am, that there's a secondary location
No.
that was ever communicated to the dispatcher?
No.
And is that significant to you?
Yes.
Why?
Because he took her someplace else and he didn't radio it in. So he didn't want it known.
Ma'am, there's been some testimony in regards to Ms. Ellis and her belief that the man who assaulted her possibly was a black man. You've heard that, correct?
Yes.
Did she tell you that during your initial interview?
Yes.
When she told you that, was that significant to you?
Somewhat. There's no lights out there at the school, but it was a little bit.
It was a little bit what?
Shady as
I mean,
What did you
come on. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Line 20.
significant somewhat? What'd you do then in regard to trying to determine whether or not she could have been talking about a black officer?
I checked all the crime information logs to see if another officer had run her through through the Varuna logs. Then I checked the crime information logs to see if another officer could have ran her through crime information, and she had no other contact with an Oklahoma City police officer.
Ma'am, other than the 4 times, as is documented on this Word document, states 294, that Sherry Ellis was run through the Varuna system. Was she run again in the Oklahoma City Police Varuna system in 2014, except by you in preparation for this case?
Right. No, she was not.
Additionally, ma'am, did you obtain the lineup for the shift, which would have included after midnight on May 7th?
Right.
So the shift lineup would have been for May 6th.
Correct.
Is that right? I'm going to show you 295. Is that the shift lineup
Yes.
for May 6th?
Correct.
So from 4 o'clock in the afternoon on May 6th to 2 a.m. May 7th.
Correct.
Offer states 295, counsel.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit 295 will be admitted.
Ma'am, on states 295, gonna go back up to the top. So we have Tuesday, May 6th, correct?
Correct.
And again, and the other dates, the January. Should that be June for the arraignment date on traffic?
Yeah, but I don't know what 0 is.
Yeah, it's a typo, isn't it?
Yes.
Then we have May 21st. Obviously, there's a typo for the traffic arraignment date. If you give a parking ticket, you're supposed to give it May 21st.
Right.
All right. But the significance to your investigation was who was working. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we have at the bottom of this for the officers working in Sector 1, Set A. Do you see that?
Yes.
And, okay. It shows 2 Charlie 45, Officer Holtzclaw. That's officer is on duty for the 6th, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, when you go down this lineup, we have Sector 2, Sector 1, Sector 3. What are those referring to?
Your division, like Spring Lake Division, and all our divisions are divided into sectors, and then the sectors are divided into districts. There's 3 sectors in Spring Lake, and it's just what sector you're assigned to.
Ma'am, in regards to the officers, and again, if you go down the column, you see some are on duty, some are off duty. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you go down here, for example, to Sector 1, Set B. There's other officers that are on and off.
Correct.
Going on down, correct?
Yes.
Ma'am, of all the officers that were on duty, did you determine whether or not any of these individuals were Black men or African American men?
One was
Which one?
the A. Edwards.
A. Edwards on May the 6th, the shift beginning at 4 and ending at 2, was in what sector?
He was in Set B, Sector 3. Go up. Let me double check. Sector 2.
Okay, thank you. And Officer Holtzclaw was in Sector...
1.
Do you know where Sector 2 is?
It's Sector 2, I believe, is east of I-35.
And Sector 1 is
West of I-35.
west of I-35.
I don't know the exact boundaries.
With some north and south boundaries as well.
Yes, but I don't know what those are.
Ma'am, in determining that Officer Edwards was on duty, but in a different sector, and then in looking through the CIU logs and the ABL, I'm sorry, not the ABL, the Varuna logs.
Yeah,
Did you
not the
find-
ABL. You damn straight.
Well, don't look at the ABL, man.
Hell no.
Oops.
We're going to
Yeah.
look at that in a minute, I heard, but that'll be interesting.
Did you ever find any contact that Officer Edwards had come in contact with Ms. Edwards during this time period?
With
Ms.
Miss Ellis?
That's what I meant to say. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Ellis.
No, I didn't.
Had you satisfied yourself then that there was not a Black officer involved
Yes.
with Ms. Ellis
Yes.
that you were able to identify through any of the records maintained by the police department?
Yes.
Did you also, ma'am, have an opportunity to look at the AVL then?
I did.
And with the concern that there still is a Black officer, potentially, or that she remembered it being possibly a black officer.
She
Did you
did
try to
not say
see?
possibly, so shut the.
No, she didn't. Did you try to see if Officer Holtzclaw not only was consistent with running her on 5-7, but also being in that location that she said the officer assaulted her at 18th and Highland, and then took her to the school?
I did check the AVL and I did find that.
Ma'am, first I want to show you state's number 228. I'm sorry, 288. Apologies, Your Honor. 288. Do you recognize that map?
Yes, it's
What is that?
AVL on the 18th and Highland area. Oh, they're going to separate them. oh, oh my God. That's how they dealt
Jesus.
with it. Okay.
Uh,
Oh,
all right. And is it accurate based upon what the ABL department provided to you?
yes.
288.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, State's
All
Exhibit 288 will be admitted.
And here's 288. This road is Highland, correct?
Correct.
The cross streets aren't evident, but is this between 17th and 18th on Highland?
Yes.
In fact, ma'am, if I look at 268, that shows both 17th Street at the bottom and 18th Street at the top of what's on the screen. That's where the assault happened on Highland that you're referencing, correct?
Yes.
And then do you see this house?
Yes.
The way the roof line works?
Yeah.
And if you look at this at 288, is that consistent with that house?
Yes.
All right, ma'am. It shows on 5/7/2014 that trees there. It's hard to read, but is it showing 12? I can't make that out.
58.
12:58 a.m., correct?
Yes. 12:58, 13.
Does it show a speed 0?
Yes.
And then there's another hit a little bit above it at 108.14, and the speed's 0,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And then another hit over here at 103.13. So there's 3 there. I think that's one in the middle of it too. Is that correct?
Correct.
Jesus. Is this the location that Miss Ellis informed you Officer Holtzclaw was running her for warrants and those types of things?
Yes.
And although we've got 3 speeds at 0, these dots are hitting, although they're close together, they're not hitting the exact same spot, correct?
Correct.
Is that consistent with your understanding of the way just the AVL system works?
Yes.
It's not an exact location. Even at 0 speeds, it can show some variation.
Correct.
I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit 289. Ask if you recognize what 289 is.
Yes.
Well, what is it?
It's the AVL where the cul-de-sac is on Northeast 18th.
Dead end cul-de-sac at Northeast 18th. And is it accurate based upon what the AVL department gave you?
Huh? What is it? Is it accurate based upon what the AVL department gave you? Okay. What is that kind of question? What does that even mean?
How can she verify? I mean,
yes.
Well, it says it's
She can verify, yes.
where the cul-de-sac is. Okay. Offer states 289.
no objection.
Okay. it's
Judge
admitted.
I was
Anderson,
muted, sorry. 289 will be admitted.
What'd you say, Jack?
nothing. Continue.
Hello,
Oh.
Sherri. That's what he said.
Here's 289. All right. This is showing essentially the dead end street at Northeast 18th, going into the field area behind the school.
Correct.
Ma'am, when you look at it, if I start to the west, it shows 1:13:41 a.m., speed 15 miles an hour.
Yes.
Then it appears it's functioning and hits 5 seconds later at speed 12.
He's saying miles per hour, but the AVL maps are
Knots per hour.
they're measured in knots. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Am I
Line 18.
yes, line 18? Yes.
And based on the location of those data points, does it appear that direction of travel is toward the school?
Correct.
And then there's some space. And we have a data point at 1:13:51 at 7 knots.
Yes.
And then there's several here that hit within that cul-de-sac, showing 1:14 speed 9, 1:14:28 speed 2 knots, 1:14:09 and speed 9, correct?
Correct.
What's your understanding of what Mr. Hill and the AVL department has told you about whenever a car goes off a map street? What happens?
Judge, I'd object to anything Mr. Hill may have told you as hearsay.
I can't see that if I have to say something.
Read it,
Jack.
Jack.
The court, all right, I'll sustain it to what Mr. Hill said to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. What's your understanding, ma'am, of whenever the AVL, if a police car that's logged into the system goes off a gridded paved street, what does the AVL do?
Well, it's still going to snap to the closest street, city street.
With that being said, ma'am, it looks like, what does it appear is happening based upon that AVL then? Is it consistent with what Ms. Ellis told you?
Yes, during some of those times that are listed right there in the circle, he could actually be in the field. It's just driving toward the buildings, but it's snapping back to the center line of the circle because our AVL doesn't show fields.
Bullshit.
It
No one's
actually
gridded
does
the
snap.
field.
It actually does snap to there.
I believe you, but she's speculating. It's not proof of anything.
Right.
Yeah, of where he's at. No one's gridded the fields. They've only put the grid in the computer of where the streets are.
Correct.
So is it possible, based on your understanding, that 9, those 2 9-knot speeds, could be wherever he's off the grid, but is just hitting closest to the center line?
Object to the form, Your Honor. All
I
right,
can't
the
see
court. I got it. The court. All right, I'll sustain it as to the form of the question.
Ma'am, based upon your understanding of the AVL, could the officer be driving through the field at 9 knots and it hit at that location?
Yes.
Show you State's Exhibit number 290 and ask you, recognize what that is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a little bigger overview. It shows the cul-de-sac, it shows the school, and it shows AVL a him on Miramar.
All right. And is it accurate based upon what they gave you?
Yes. There's that question again.
Yeah.
No,
Offer
they gave me
290.
something else, and I just I made my own.
Yeah. offer 290?
No objection, Your Honor.
State's
court-
Exhibit
st-
290
oh.
will be admitted. I could see this time.
Yeah.
And there's 290. So that we get oriented again, the points that you and I just talked about. There may even be another one on this map that's showing a 7-knot. Do you see that?
Yes.
But are those essentially consistent with what we just saw in the previous exit? What?
Exhibit, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be
Yeah.
exhibit.
Yeah.
Well, the previous. Okay. This must be the part where the jury was falling asleep.
No kidding. Jesus.
This is ridiculous.
It is.
And I just want to add, sorry that my AVL picture has been kind of messing with the transcript, but what I'm showing you in the picture with the red and green markings, that is in Sherry Ellis's police report, but it was not used as an exhibit at trial. And I think there's reasons why.
Doesn't match.
Yeah, I don't think there's, it's been really hard to go through it. I think there's some inconsistent times in there
Well,
that they didn't want to use.
we know that every time they pull an AVL, the points come up different. So it's the data points, they don't always populate the map the same. And I think I recall Scott Adams having an issue with that, with when they start using some of these animated AVL presentations. I'm
Crumley
trying to
is guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear me?
Oh, Crumley is guilty.
Yep. Involuntary manslaughter.
Has his wife been sentenced yet?
I don't think so. He's going to be sentenced on April 9th.
All right.
Recall.
Like 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we? Are we on 14?
We
44?
are on.
Oh, line 14.
I think line 10.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, sorry.
States 290 then shows the buildings that we've seen on other exhibits, but there's no data points until we get over to Miramar. Is that right?
Correct.
And ma'am, I want to make sure I get the first one on it, okay? On Miramar, there's nothing that's south of that data point that shows in that bottom green where my finger is, correct?
Correct.
And then if I can look at it, ma'am, and I don't know if you can, how well you can see it, but it shows a 9 knot at 118.17. Is that right?
Right.
And then the next one appears to be 118.27, which is right here.
Yes.
And again, they're hitting close together. But then you have another one right here at 118.37, correct?
Correct.
Eventually, ma'am, and again, I have to move it up to change the view on the monitor. But if you'll stay with me when I go north on Miramar, the next at least data point hitting in the center line of the street is at 118.45.
Correct.
And then going on, we have data marks 119, speed 10, And I think there's one before it, and that's 11853, right?
Yes.
Based on just the direction of travel, looking at Miramar, does it appear the AVL shows him going north?
Yes.
And since it starts mid-street with that first data point at 11817, is it significant to you as to what the AVL is showing? As to how he gets onto Miramar?
Yes.
Why?
Well, he had to drove through the field to get onto it because he's not coming from the street down south.
And in that regard, ma'am, I notice that there's 3 data points that seem to be close together right in here. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that consistent with your understanding of what the data points could be telling us over in the cul-de-sac?
Yes, he could be in the field driving towards Miramar and they're snapping to the closest street.
Detective, I notice when I look at what the ABL gave you as to what happens on Miramar to the east of the school, but I'm not seeing any 0 speeds. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you able to look at this exhibit and tell me the time difference between the last data point that we have him moving here and the next data point that he shows up moving on Miramar?
The time difference between those 2 times?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And what was the time difference, ma'am?
It was like, I thought I wrote it down. Almost 4 minutes.
Almost 4 minutes.
Yeah, I don't have the exact.
Is that consistent with your understanding of how the AVL works? Is that if you're driving through the field, it would still hit a spot on the closest street. But if you're not stopped for 5 minutes, you're not going to get a data point.
Right.
God, this is such bullshit. I mean, such speculation. Is it similar to the type of information that you received with the previous investigation up by the bus barn?
Correct.
Did that change in any way your belief as to whether or not it was possible that Miss Ellis was telling you accurate information?
It did not.
Why not?
Because 4 minutes is plenty of time to put your penis in someone's vagina.
Jesus Christ. It's
Yeah, she
less
does
than
it all
4
the time.
minutes.
She does it all the time.
Now, ma'am, I'm going to now give you State's Exhibit number 297 and ask if you recognize what is contained on that disc.
Yes.
What is it?
It's radio traffic.
And is it accurate as to the stop relevant to the 12:57 to 1:18 a.m. time range that shows on the CAD call, as well as on the initial checks on Varuna and CIU? Jesus,
Yes.
can you be more confusing, Giger?
No, they can. He can. He will.
I can't imagine sitting there listening to this as a juror. And have you reviewed it and is it accurate?
Yes.
Offer states 297.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibit number 297 will be admitted.
What is that?
That's him going out on one subject at 18th and Highland Drive.
Is that consistent with what Ms. Ellis told you?
Yes.
What was that?
That was him on crime information. He's standing by and she's telling him he's number 2 in line.
Okay. What was that, ma'am? Oh, they're playing. What was that, ma'am?
The crime information dispatcher's telling him to go ahead and he doesn't respond back to her. And so she gets back on the radio and says, "Go ahead."
Now, would this have been before he gave Sherry Ellis's name to the dispatcher to run it for warrants?
Yeah, well, he hadn't given it. She's wanting him to give it, but he hasn't given it yet.
And again, detective, so that I'm clear, there's two different dispatchers involved in radio traffic. One is the crime information, which runs for warrants,
Right?
and the other one is
Dispatching calls.
as to where the location of the officer is.
Right?
So that's the dispatcher saying, "Where are you?"
No. This is the dispatcher saying, "Who do you want to run?"
That's what I mean. Go ahead. And then he's not responding.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. Is that the same thing again?
That's her asking it again because he's not responding to her.
Okay, ma'am. What was going on with that call?
I couldn't understand what when he got back in. I couldn't understand what he said. I have to hear it again, maybe. But then he said that he had stepped out of the car and now he's back in. And he said, "I know, I called you." And she said, "I know, I called you twice." And now he's running her.
Was that significant to you, ma'am?
Yes.
Why?
Because he's out of the car. I mean, you call crime information and your number, you wait until your turn. Then you call it in, and he's gotten out of the car.
Ma'am, any other radio traffic we've heard from from Officer Holtzclaw during this time period, is there anything similar that occurred up to this point?
No.
The court. All right, we'll take a break, ladies and gentlemen. It's about 9 minutes after 11. So we'll take our morning break. I need to admonish you not to discuss the case, not to let anyone discuss the case with you. Don't try to find out anything about the case. If anyone should try to contact you and visit with you about the case, contact me or a member of my staff immediately. What we'll do is recess until 11:30. So the jury will be in recess until 11:30. I'd ask you to reconvene in the jury deliberation room. Leave your notepads in your chairs.
And so at this point, they all leave and go out into the hall and use the same bathrooms as the people in the courtroom and everyone else.
The jurors do?
Uh-huh.
Wow, they don't have their own facility?
No, the jurors were standing in line for the bathrooms, which there aren't very many bathrooms.
That's crazy.
Walls.
That's crazy because people could
Right.
be talking around them, you know?
Right.
That's
Oh, I'm sure
crazy.
that never. Come on, man. That never happened.
Right. Jesus.
So I just want to say, sorry. The picture that I just had up is the one that they were talking about, Exhibit 290. That's what they used at trial, right here. That's what they used at trial to call, to say all the times and stuff where he was here at the cul-de-sac, the dead end in the park and all that. And all of this and all of these times that you can't even see over here, instead of using this one where you can see a better idea of of what they were talking about. They used
Did that previous
other
one you just showed us, did that have any marks on it?
no,
You can barely see him in the cul-de-sac.
you can't even see it.
Oh my
And
God,
then-
now I see him. Oh my God.
And then on Miramar, where he was snapping to on Miramar, where are the data points?
I mean, you can barely see data points, but you can't see times over here.
Wow, those are as
That's
good as the pictures of the
crazy.
pants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hey,
that
let's
is
So,
use our
crazy.
shittiest photocopy machine for the most
God.
well,
crucial evidence.
not only that, but why weren't they using the actual data points that were in her police report?
Yeah.
They could, I don't know. It's why I just feel like all that shit's just, um, I just think there's too
They're
many
just trying to.
questions if they use that. And so they just use the most, I mean, the jury never knew what was in the police report that way.
And this Edwards guy, did we ever see his AVL?
I guess we'll see if Scott Adams has it, but I don't believe so.
No, there's no AVL for Alexander Edwards.
And at the time of trial, we didn't know that Alexander Edwards had, you know, he would later be arrested for basically
Yeah.
blowing the cover of a sting operation that had been ongoing for quite some time.
Yeah, that wasn't until 2016. So,
He gave his, I guess he gave his favorite prostitute a heads up on that. Anyway,
I also think it's possible that he stopped her and did not call it in. If
maybe.
he did indeed, do this, but they got it all mixed together with Daniel's stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if we had recorded interviews of her talking to Sherry's brother, we would know exactly what information had already been put out there. If we had, it's just so frustrating that you're left to guess what information was mainly being given to people from the detectives, but
Yeah.
what the accuser's response was, because by the time that we hear a recorded interview of Sherry Ellis, obviously there had been some interaction. I mean, obviously Davis had told her brother, which I'm still blown away that we're hearing about her brother when all along it was Vernon Starr that she contacted on Facebook. I don't know. I just get so twisted up about the selective recording of interviews.
Mm.
It
Well,
should, we need to pass some legislation that says that if interactions are not recorded, they are not admissible in court.
Yeah.
agree.
I agree.
Also, the I forgot what I can't remember what I was going to say. Never mind. I feel like it was important, but
You'll think of it.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys want to get back into it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Where are we? I see.
Recess
Bottom
was
of the page.
taken.
Yeah, bottom of the page. Sherri.
All right, thank you. I need everyone to be seated, please. Mr. Holtzclaw, you're excused till 11:30. All right, we'll be in recess till 11:30. All right, let the record reflect that all members of the jury are present. Counsel for the state, counsel for the defendant is present. Mr. Giger, you may continue.
Judge, I think we've fixed our technical glitch. Can we try again to publish the rest about our exhibit?
All right, very well.
Detective, that's, again, the CIU dispatcher. Now getting back to Officer Holtzclaw, telling him that there's 3 warrants, right?
Correct.
Okay. What's that?
That's the dispatcher, not the warrant dispatcher. The call dispatcher saying 1090. She's checking his welfare because he's been out there for a while.
Okay. So now he had talked to her earlier in some of the radio traffic that we've listened to. And then in the meantime, he switched over to CIU dispatch.
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's the dispatcher still trying to figure out where he is.
Right.
Okay. And then his response was he's not at 18th and Highland. He's at 19th and Miramar.
Yes.
Is 19th and Miramar 18th is the cul-de-sac?
Right.
So the next street north would be 19th.
Right.
And Miramar is at the intersection of Miramar and 19th Street, which is consistent with, I think, some of the last data points we saw in the ABL exhibit. Is that correct?
Right.
Once he started moving again and heading north,
Right.
in any event, radio traffic that you were able to find in regards to the stop that began at 18th and Highland, did Officer Holtzclaw inform the dispatcher that he was transporting anyone, anywhere?
No.
Is that significant to you?
Yes.
Why?
Because you don't transport someone somewhere without notifying dispatch.
And ma'am, I want to ask if you've been out to the area, ma'am. You've been out to the area that's depicted in states number 268, correct?
Yes.
You've stood at both these locations?
Yes.
Would it be possible if Ms. Ellis had not been put in the car and transported to be able to have a visual line of sight from 18th and Highland to where Officer Holtzclaw went, down at the end of 18th Street and into the school?
No.
Ma'am, in court yesterday, did you hear Mr. Adams inquire of Miss Ellis as to whether or not she was giving Officer Holtzclaw information about drug activity and didn't want to be seen, so he took her behind the school?
Yes.
Ma'am, if a police officer, in your experience, was going to receive that type of information and take someone somewhere, would it be documented somewhere?
Yes.
Explain.
Well, you would still go 1014, especially with somebody of the opposite sex. So you could give your mileage and you would either make a report on the type of information she's giving or fill out a field interview card. If it's drug information, then that would be forwarded to either special projects or impact. If it was prostitution information, it would be forwarded to Vice.
Okay. I think you may have talked about two things we haven't heard about. Special impact or special
Special projects.
projects. What are those two things?
Impact does smaller scale narcotics investigations, and special impact or special projects does larger scale narcotics investigations.
So those are subdivisions of the police department in addition to the Spring Lake or Hefner units. They're actually smaller units that specialized or focus on drug activity.
Yes.
And is it your experience that when patrol officers receive information from potential informants about drug activity, what do patrol that what are they expected to do with that type of information?
Get a report and forward it to the appropriate unit.
In this case, ma'am, did you have an opportunity to search to see if Officer Holtzclaw filled out a field interview card in regards to any information Sherry Ellis might have provided to him?
I did.
And what did you find?
He didn't fill one out.
With all that, Is all that significant to you?
Yes,
And again, why?
because I don't think he's talking to her about drug activity and prostitution activity.
Judge, I'm going to object to anything she may think is speculation.
Sustained.
Ma'am, in regards to the documents that you reviewed to try to verify Officer Holtzclaw's activity and whereabouts, up to this point, we've talked about the things that are done with the dispatchers in the routine course, just like we've talked about every other time, correct?
Right.
Ma'am, if an officer receives some type of information about drug activity in the area, in addition to filling out a field interview card or making some type of report, would you also expect them to document that type of contact on their daily activity reports?
Yes.
Show you states number 296 and ask if you recognize what that document is.
Yes.
What is that document?
It's Officer Holtzclaw's activity card for May 6, 2014.
And is it accurate based upon the information that you received in requesting what he turned in that day?
Yes.
Offer states 296.
No objection, Your Honor.
State's exhibit number 296 will be admitted.
296 is the activity log for 2 Charlie 45, Officer Holtzclaw, 1728. It shows 5614. Again, this is the shift that would have began at 4 o'clock on May the 6th.
Correct.
And would have ended after midnight around 2 a.m. on May the 7th.
Correct.
Ma'am, when I go down State's Exhibit number 296, it starts with lineup at 4 o'clock, correct?
Correct.
The last information that Officer Holtzclaw logged is on line 13. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what does it show?
1613 Northeast 14th, he made a traffic stop.
Okay. What time does it show he made the traffic stop?
5 minutes after midnight.
And it ends when?
20 minutes after midnight.
Ma'am, based upon your review of the other information from dispatch, Varuna, etc., when did the traffic stop? What he characterized as a traffic stop. When did the contact with Sherry Ellis begin on May the 7th of 2014?
57 minutes after midnight.
Okay, so is there anything documented on his activity log that shows that he had contact with Sherry Ellis?
No.
Is there anything documented on his activity log that he came in contact with a potential drug informant that provided him information about drug activities on the northeast side of Oklahoma City?
No.
Are there activity logs reviewed by a supervisor that would look over what he did that night?
Yes.
Are the CAD calls reviewed by a supervisor that would look over what he did that night?
The CAD calls, like the
The dispatchers.
printouts,
The dispatchers.
no.
Do the CIU dispatchers review what officers do?
No.
Is it significant to you in your investigation as one of the lead detectives in this case that Officer Holtzclaw neglected to document any contact at all with Sherry Ellis?
Yes.
Ma'am, in the course of your investigation and in your conversations with Ms. Ellis, did you have an opportunity to ask her to voluntarily provide you a DNA sample via buccal swab?
Yes.
And did she comply and give you that sample?
Yes.
Was that sample later turned into serology to see if it matched any DNA evidence that you had in the case?
Yes.
And specifically, what DNA evidence were you trying to see if it matched?
The female DNA that we still didn't know who it belonged to on the inside of Officer Holtzclaw's pants. See, that's why Giger had him do
Retest.
do test the inside of the pants 15 months after the pants were seized so that they could say inside of the pants, because that sounds way more incriminating.
OBS. Whole deal.
Well, they don't ever have any of that touch DNA. They never had a case like that before.
It's so rare.
It's just so rare, you just don't get it. We just don't get it. We just don't get those. And and rain will wash off and okay, sorry.
Let's see, where were we? Okay, and were you told information as to whether or not that there was a match?
I was told that there was not a match with Sherry Ellis.
So it's not Sherry Ellis's DNA either.
Correct.
Was that significant to you in your investigation?
Yes.
What did it mean to you?
Meant I needed to keep looking.
Getting more victims.
Gotta get more
As the
victims.
witness.
Go get more victims.
Fuckers. Pass the witness.
All right, cross-examination.
Detective Davis, as a lead investigator in this case, it's my understanding that Detective Gregory was getting ready to go on vacation or leave for a couple of weeks, and that's the reason you were the one that was tasked with trying to locate Ms. Ellis.
Correct.
Okay. And during that effort, you talked about all the different things that you did, that you went to pretty extraordinary efforts in an attempt to locate her, correct?
Correct.
And at that point in time, you would agree with me that in early August of 2014, Miss Ellis had not reported anything inappropriate between herself and Officer Holtzclaw, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You eventually made contact by way of telephone with Miss Ellis, and you set up an interview for her to come in and interview in person, correct?
Yes.
And after you interviewed her, that's when you went back and you maintained all these documents that now have been introduced, more particularly the AVL logs, correct?
Right.
Now in regards to the AVL logs, we start out with, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now you would agree with me that where did the very first contact happen between Officer Holtzclaw and Miss Ellis?
Just south of 18th and Highland.
I'm going to show you what has been introduced as 288. Would this be where the first contact was made?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that the AVL cannot be manipulated that you're aware of in any way, correct?
Not that I know of.
Okay. It's just a computer and it does what it's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Okay. Now, in the AVL here, it confirms that Officer Holtzclaw at this point in time calls CIU whenever I guess I'm supposed to say he stopped at this location that's depicted on 288, correct?
Yes.
And he also made a dispatch he also calls dispatch at that time.
Yes.
Okay. So Officer Holtzclaw is putting out to dispatch and to CIU that he is in contact with Ms. Ellis, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then in furtherance of that, he's talking to CIU about whether or not she has any wants or warrants, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Ellis at that point in time did have some, correct?
Yes.
Again, they were municipal warrants that aren't of great significance to the Oklahoma City Police Department, correct?
Correct.
And it would not be unusual whatsoever for a patrol officer not to take someone in on warrants such as that, correct?
Correct.
Now, what is the last hit that we have on 288? We have 3 zeros. You would agree with me. You would agree with that, correct?
Yes.
We have 3 zeros speeds. The first one starts at, I believe, at 2 minutes prior to 1 at 2:58 a.m. Speed 0.
Yes. Oh God,
You
that's
have,
so messed up.
yeah, you have no reason to dispute that.
No.
And if you match that up with the CAD call, that's approximately about the time that the CAD call was initiated, correct?
Correct.
Then again, about 1:03, there's another 1:03 a.m. in the morning, and we know for a fact that Officer Holtzclaw's car is parked and there's 0 speed at that location on 288.
Yes.
And again, at 1:08:14, approximately 5 minutes later, again, Officer Holtzclaw is at 0 speed at the initial stop at the location, correct?
Yes.
So at 1:08:14, you would agree with me that we know for a fact that Officer Holtzclaw is at 0 speed, parked on the public street there that is depicted in 288, correct?
It's 108:14. Yes.
All right. Now, the next AVL that we have, this is the street we're looking at on 288. If you continue up this street, it goes into a dead end, correct?
Not this street.
Okay. Okay.
You're looking at Highland here.
Okay. Then it goes to, what street does it dead end at? Is that 18th?
It goes to 18th. You have to turn east, and then it dead ends.
Okay. So this would be the dead end that I'm talking about. That is actually 18th, correct?
Right.
And on 18th, we can see the line of travel that Officer Holtzclaw's squad car makes on this particular date, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that there are several streets noted, but there are no 0 speeds noted at this point in time, correct?
Correct.
So the last 0 speed that we have calculated from the AVL is back on Highland, back over on Highland,
Correct.
correct? And that was at 1:08:14, when we know for a fact the car was not moving.
Correct.
Now, as the car journeys down towards the cul-de-sac, at no time do we ever hit 0 speed again, correct?
Correct.
And the last hit that we have is that cul-de-sac is at 1:14:28.
Correct.
Okay. And at 1:14:28, it shows Officer Holtzclaw's squad car is going 2 knots.
Correct.
And that would be approximately 2.3 miles an hour, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that at the immediate speed prior to that, he's going 7 knots. And you would agree with me that 2 knots would be more consistent with driving over a curb doing approximately 2.3 miles an hour than 7 knots, which would be about 10 miles an hour.
I would.
Would you agree with me that the most people would go over a curb at a slow speed?
Yes.
Okay. So assuming that, and we know for a fact that at 1:14:28, Officer Holtzclaw's car is traveling at 2 knots, correct?
Yes.
Now, this may be a little hard to see, but this is 269, and if I need I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, just so I'm giving a fair and accurate representation of 289 that we're looking. The previous exhibit that we were just looking at, the speed that I was talking about was right here in this cul-de-sac, right?
That's where it snapped to, yes.
That's where it snapped to. And that was at 2 knots per hour, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, under your testimony, under Mrs. Hill's testimony, your line of travel, and I'll show, do you see this? This is the end of the dead end, right? Correct? Where my pin where the pin head is.
What do you mean the end of the whole circles?
It's the dead end.
The whole circle's the dead end?
Right here, indicating.
Right. Right.
That's the cul-de-sac or circle.
Right.
Okay. Do you agree with me that the line of travel that you say Officer Holtzclaw took would have been along this path that I'm doing with the pin and behind this building?
Yeah, but I think you went on the wrong side of the tree.
Okay. This is the government's introduced this as 268. Is that a better accurate?
I still think that when Sherry did it, it's on the other side of the tree. Does that the red line should be on the north side of that tree?
Okay. This is the government's exhibit.
Right. And that's the way the AVL that's the way it did it. But I'm saying the way that she said, he just drove, and I don't know that it even matters.
Are you saying this tree? Are you saying this tree?
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I lost my place. I was plugging in my computer. What line are we on?
8.
No, go down by the cul-de-sac.
Right here.
Right.
It should be further over here.
No, other way.
This way?
Right. Yeah. It might be a foot, 2 feet difference. I don't know that it matters.
But it does. Okay, but generally what we're talking about is the last speed that snapped 2 knots, 114, is right here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then you would agree with me that there's some distance that has to be traveled, and I'm going to go back to 269. Okay, you would agree with.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, you would agree with me that there's a distance to be traveled in the grass off the roads under Miss Ellis' version of events that has to be traveled to be behind this building here, correct?
Yes.
And then eventually the next dot that we have here, or the next AVL report that we have after that 114.28 showing him going 2 knots, the next hit that we get is on Miramar at 118.17. A little bit less than 4 minutes on this street, correct?
Yes.
Okay. During your investigation, so we know for a fact that there's about a 4-minute gap of no ABL snaps, correct?
Correct.
And just so that I'm communicating, 114 and then 118, a little bit less than 3 minutes from here to here, a little bit less than 4 minutes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in your investigation, did you ever measure the distance from here to here to here, indicating?
I did.
Where we get the 114 AVL snap, and then where we get the 118 AVL snap, what's the distance in between there going behind this building? Did you ever measure to see how far that is?
I did not.
Would it surprise you to realize that that is 504 feet from cul-de-sac to behind the building to Miramar?
No.
Okay. Now, in your calculations, you understand that during this less than 4 minute time frame, Miss Ellis is claiming that there was a sexual assault that was actual intercourse.
Yes.
Okay. And that 4 minutes, we're not giving Officer Holtzclaw any time to travel. Would you agree, from the cul-de-sac over to Miramar, correct?
Well, I don't.
During that 4 minute, during that 4 minutes, he had to travel from the cul-de-sac behind the building and somehow get over to Miramar.
Well, yes, but some of those little times he could be doing the travel in the field, but it would just go to that.
That's what you're assuming, correct? Because you don't have, because all we have is the ABL leading up to the cul-de-sac shows consistent hits. Does it not? I'm looking at 289.
But I'm not assuming that he had to travel in the field.
Right. We know for a fact.
And it can't snap in the field, so some of those knots were travel time in the field.
Okay, but all I'm saying is, and you would agree with me that we have zero snaps of zero speeds, correct?
Correct.
So all we can go off of is the AVL that we have here, and it's snapping consistently all the way through here as you would expect it to do, correct?
Correct.
And then we get to 114.28, and we're showing the car going 2 knots, 2.3 miles an hour, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, assuming that it's 503 feet across that field from the cul-de-sac distance behind the building over to Miramar, it takes some period of time to navigate that, correct?
Yeah, it's going to take some.
Okay. You also agree with me that you say there's trees out there, and I believe you also showed that there's some sort of power plant, correct?
Not a plant, but a box.
Well, it's a power structure of some kind.
Yes.
Okay. And going 2 knots, we're going 2 knots per hour. Do you know how long it would take to go from here to over to Miramar?
No, because I couldn't do that math. That math's over my head.
No
I
shit.
could drive across the field in 10 seconds.
In 10 seconds?
If I was driving a car, I could drive across that field in 10 seconds.
You can 10 seconds. You can go 504 feet in 10 seconds across the field at night.
Yeah.
Did you try? Oh, okay. Just tell the jury how many times you attempted.
I didn't attempt it any times.
You didn't even measure it.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, does it surprise you to learn that it's over 2.5 minutes just to drive 503 feet at 2 knots an hour? Does that surprise you that it takes 2.5 minutes to drive 504 feet at 2 knots?
Form of the question. Facts not in evidence.
Well, I'll sustain it to the form of the question. You can rephrase your question.
Have you calculated at all how long it would take going 2 knots to go the direction you're saying Officer Holtzclaw took Miss Ellis?
No, I wouldn't even know how to put that on a piece of paper and calculate it.
Well, did you ask anyone
No,
down at Oklahoma City to do that?
no,
Did you go to anyone in traffic accidents and ask them to calculate it?
no.
And if you were going 5 miles an hour, would it surprise you to learn that it would take over a minute and 10 seconds to get there?
Same objection. Form of the question.
I'll sustain it as to the form of the question.
Did you do any calculation? You would agree with me that it would take some period of time, whatever it may be, to get across that field if it's a fact that's what he did, correct?
Yes. Oh, wait, sorry. Yes, it's going to take some time.
Okay. Now, and you're aware of the fact that Officer Holtzclaw trained with the gang unit early on in his career, correct?
Yes.
And the gang unit specializes in obtaining information or attempting to obtain information from people, correct?
Yes.
Now, if Officer Holtzclaw had picked up Miss Ellis here and she said that she had some information, however, she didn't want to be seen, and he continues to drive and tries to get into an area where the public and all these houses can't see her, and he drives and he's asking her questions and she's not giving any information. Assume for the purposes of this question, she won't answer any of the information, that she doesn't give any information. And he drives, and would it not be consistent that he just simply stopped the car, let her out, and fill out a field interview card because he had no information to put on the card?
Facts not in evidence, Your Honor.
I'm asking her in the scenario that she's laid out here, Your Honor.
Come up. The last part of your question was what? Would it be consistent?
Would it be consistent with Miss Ellis giving no information and him taking her to a spot where other people can't see so that he can talk to her and she gives, and the whole time he's driving because there's no zero speeds?
So the first part of the question was laying the foundation.
Yes,
And then your question is, would it be consistent?
because there's no zero stops.
I'll let you ask that question.
Okay. You would agree with me since we have no zero stops, we have nothing after the initial stop here of any zero stops, correct?
Correct.
You would agree with me that it would be consistent if Officer Holtzclaw had Miss Ellis and drove her to a place where they could visit and she's not giving any information, that he just continues on over to Miramar and lets her out.
No.
That would not be consistent with less than 4 minutes, would it not?
No.
And since we have no zero speeds, tell me why that would not be consistent with it being less than 4 minutes.
It's not consistent because he would have gone 1014 with her and given a mileage because he's transporting someone of the opposite sex.
Okay, assuming that he just didn't do the 1014. We know he called into the CAD unit, correct?
Yes, to dispatch.
He initiated the stop. We have the document in evidence, correct?
Correct.
And we have the document in evidence that the actual CAD people, they stopped the call at 1:18, correct?
Yes.
So we know for a fact that Ms. Mills testified that this sexual assault that she's saying that took place behind the building lasted between 5 and 10 minutes. You'd agree with me that if that was true, that statement was true, we would have a zero stop somewhere either here or here, correct?
If it lasted 5 to 10 minutes, yes, we would have a zero stop.
And we don't have that, do we?
No.
Okay. So we know for a fact that nothing took longer than 5 minutes, correct? We know that for a fact at a zero speed, or we would have a zero stop, correct?
Correct.
So is it possible, is it not, that Holtzclaw simply drove through this area, got no information, let her out of the vehicle, and headed back over to Miramar and did all that traveling, the 503 feet in less than 4 minutes, as opposed to having a sexual encounter to the point of ejaculation with someone behind the building, correct?
Well, the way you're putting it, yes.
Okay. Now, you would agree with me that if Officer Holtzclaw did obtain some information from Miss Ellis, and I think you testified to this on direct, in regards to drug houses, that he would be required or expected under the Oklahoma City policy, I guess, to pass that on to special projects or impact.
Yes.
Okay. And we know he didn't do that, correct?
Correct.
And we also, you believe that if he had received some information about prostitution, that he would have forwarded that information onto the vice department, correct?
Correct.
And we know that he did not do that.
Correct.
Okay. If Officer Holtzclaw received no information from Ms. Ellis regarding either prostitution or drugs, where does he record that?
Well, he would have recorded it on his activity card that he was out with her.
I'm going to get to that in a second. Outside of the activity log, who would he report to that? I received no information from this individual.
Nobody.
Okay. So in regards to this daily activity log, which has been introduced as Exhibit 296, the last entry, you understand, in this, again, is what officers, there's a lot of paperwork for patrol officers to complete, correct?
Depending on the shift. If they have they could have a lot of reports to make, or if they don't, This is the only thing that they do that documents what they did throughout the day.
And they're supposed to do this at the time that they're doing the traffic stops and stuff too, are they not?
When you're done with it, when you're done with the traffic stop, then you write it down or type it in.
Okay. You would agree with me that the last entry that Officer Holtzclaw has is at about 12:20 a.m.,
Yes.
correct? And we know for a fact that the contact with Miss Ellis was after that, correct?
Correct.
We know that it was about 1 a.m.
Yes.
We don't have anything in there where Officer Holtzclaw has put down some fictitious information. There's just no information, correct?
There's no information on that, correct? Correct.
And you would agree with me that he did not take Miss Ellis to jail.
Correct.
And he did not, if he did not receive any information from her, there would be no need for him to fill out an activity card, correct?
Correct.
No, line 20.
Oh, sorry. I got lost. Obviously. No, you fill out an activity card, but you don't fill out a report.
He certainly would not have reported it to Vice, which he did not do, correct?
Correct.
And he certainly would not, he would notify, what the hell? And he certainly would not, he would notify the drug people only if he got some information, correct?
Correct.
And we know he did neither one of those.
Correct.
So you've heard Miss Ellis testify, and you know what the AVL shows without any question, right?
Correct.
It is your belief that within the less than 4 minutes, he was able to navigate the 504 feet, commit a sexual assault on Miss Ellis that included an intercourse with possible ejaculation. She told you she believed he ejaculated, correct?
She testified she didn't know.
I'm sorry. I'm going to object to.
She told you.
He's changed his question. So to that one, I don't have an objection. The one she answered.
Okay. She told you she did not in her interview that she believed that he had ejaculated.
No, she says does not know if he ejaculated.
Okay. She told you she wasn't sure whether or not he wore a condom.
Correct.
And she said it lasted about, she told you specifically, 10 minutes.
Correct. Okay, hang
And
on. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Any female right here. If someone ejaculates inside you and then you walk away, I think you're going to know it.
You know.
You know positively.
Absolutely.
So you would know positively, did he ejaculate or he did not? Come on. Jesus. This shit pisses me off. He got 62 years for her.
Yep. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to me.
Insane.
Oh,
Kim
man.
Davis is just assuming all this stuff happened, but she didn't do any investigation. None. Ellis tells her he's a black guy, darker than me. Short black guy. You're right. Sorry, Susan. Okay.
Yeah.
I've lost my place. We're at line 4?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now.
Now.
Oh, no. We're on line 2.
Okay. Line 2. And we know that's not true, correct?
By AVL, yes, correct.
Now, whenever this car, we've also heard previous testimony in this case that also Holtzclaw's car was impounded, and a number of things were buccal, swabbed, and fingerprinted, and all that stuff, correct?
Correct.
You recall that? You would agree with me that nowhere in his vehicle, anywhere, was there any DNA from Miss Ellis, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that, obviously, on any type of the clothing that was taken off Officer Holtzclaw, when it was taken from him, we again found no DNA from Miss Ellis.
Correct.
Or the police found no DNA.
Correct.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
I think I'll be brief, Your Honor. I have 3 points, but I don't know. If you want to stop for lunch, I understand.
If you'll be brief,
I'll do my best. If I'm not, please stop me.
I will.
Ma'am, in regards to Mr. Adams' question about is it possible that he drove through the field without stopping and just let her out? Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
How often does AVL hit if a car's moving?
Every 5 seconds.
So, do you have consistent AVL hits for every 5 seconds if the car doesn't stop moving?
No.
Okay, so what does that mean to you?
He stopped moving.
Now, he didn't stop for longer than 5 minutes, or there would have been a 0.
Correct.
But for Mr. Adams' hypothetical, if he would have kept moving consistently, the car would have hit every 5 seconds.
Correct.
Okay. Do you also know, ma'am, then, that some of these speeds have to be in the field?
Yes.
Because he gets from here to here. He gets from here to here, correct?
Correct.
But there's no sequential 5 seconds to get there.
Correct.
The gap's not 5 seconds from hitting one spot that's closest. Whenever he gets halfway, it kicks over to the other spot. We know he stopped.
Correct.
God.
Is that really okay? That's how that works?
My
Yeah,
thinking
they
is
just
all-
they just freaking know.
Hi, it's split. It's split off to the other street, man.
Come on, guys. You know how this went. Right.
Ma'am.
Dear.
In regards to the fact that he didn't, Mr. Adams' hypothetical, that is it possible then that he was just trying to get information from Ms. Ellis, although she didn't testify that she gave him any information, or they had that discussion? His hypothetical is it possible he picked her up and then drove her over here, correct?
Correct.
Okay. During the radio traffic, how many times does the dispatcher say, "Officer Holtzclaw, where are you? What are you doing?"
Several. I don't think she ever said that one time, actually, though, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Okay.
What are you doing? Hi.
If he was trying to get information from an informant when the dispatcher, and he's driving his car sitting right there with the radio on and everything on, the AVL and the dispatchers are talking to him. 2 different dispatchers, correct?
The AVL's talking to him? Okay. Correct. Yeah, the AVL's talking to him. Mhm.
What
That's
would you
correct.
expect? What would you expect an officer to do?
Answer the radio.
Is it significant to you that he didn't as he's driving across the field, trying to get drug information that he doesn't tell the dispatcher? "I'm talking to somebody. I'll be back in a second."
Yes.
Can you think of a reason why you wouldn't do that?
No.
Ma'am, remember when Captain Boxwell testified about how many number of points officers are expected to generate every hour?
I think it was 2 every hour.
Ma'am, whenever I look at the activity log starting at midnight, that's the 00 numbers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In order to tell his supervisor he's out doing his job, the midnight hour, he shows a stop from 5 to 20 after midnight. And if I look over, he's got 2 points, correct?
I'd have to see. I don't know what the point. I'd have to see what he's marking up top.
I'm sorry. Does that mean he gets 2 points, or am I reading it wrong?
It means he made one traffic contact and he wrote one parking citation. I don't know what.
How many? You don't know how many points that's worth?
I don't know I don't know what is worth how many points.
Okay.
I think that's on the back of the one that we introduced that had the back.
That's all right. That's in evidence and I can figure it out myself. All right. In any event, we don't know as far as what Officer Holtzclaw wrote on his log that he had any activity after that time, correct?
Correct.
And does that remain significant to you, whether he was talking to an informant that didn't give him any information or did give him information?
Yes.
Even if you talk to informants that don't give you information, would you expect officers would log that to show what they were doing?
Yes.
Pass the witness.
One question, Your Honor.
One question.
If Officer Holtzclaw had stopped behind the building that's been depicted on all these exhibits, building that Miss Ellis says that sexual assault took place, if he had stopped there for longer, for 5 minutes or longer, you would expect it to snap 0 speed on Miramar, correct?
Or I don't know, the halfway mark. It would be 0 speed in the cul-de-sac or on Miramar. I don't know which.
If Miramar is closer to that building, you would agree with me that it would snap to Miramar 0 speed.
If Miramar's closer, yes.
Yes, or if the cul-de-sac's closer, it would be there. Neither one have a 0.
Correct.
Pass the witness.
Last word.
No, sir.
Thank God.
All right, you can step down, Detective.
Ugh.
Man.
All that assuming, yep, that's what he did. I can tell.
That's crazy, man.
It's
Like
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Let's see. Hey, Hooks, anyone carry on? Susan or Jack, Sherri, any comments that you think of that you want to talk about? I'm going to try to find that point early in the testimony that I thought was weird.
Okay.
Let's see here.
I think that just all of it together, that whole testimony is and questioning is just, I mean, I'm imagining myself sitting on a jury and trying to make heads or tails of that, and I just think it's ridiculous.
The whole thing was it just a complete disaster. Because again, and I mean, Adams did kind of hammer home the point that there was no AVL showing 0 speed. This assumption by Kim Davis, she just couldn't accept that. Just couldn't accept it. Even though she has to know that what Adams is saying is possible. She has to know that.
So in Sherri's original report, she says she estimated the assault lasted 10 to 15 minutes, right?
Yep.
I mean, and there's no 0 speed, which would happen every 5 minutes. So
I think it was 5 to 10 minutes, wasn't it?
Was it? Okay, well, so I guess we have to say that the assault lasted 4 minutes and 59 seconds.
Well, no, because didn't he have to drive there as well?
Yep, that's right. He had to drive.
Using that time frame.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's just that's impossible for there not to be a 0 speed.
Take 10 seconds off.
Okay. Hey,
Kim Davis saw there in 10 seconds.
here's what I didn't know, what I've never heard before. So in the middle of Rocky gets transferred.
Yeah, that's really weird.
That's not true. We have all kinds of documentation of him working this case.
That's what I thought.
Right?
So he doesn't come back from vacation and he's already been transferred to homicide. That's not
So why
that
did he do that?
That's not true.
The hell is that about?
Yeah, because when he got back, he had Tabitha,
Right.
Carla Raines. I can't remember who else, but or was it Carla Johnson? What? No, Raines.
Yeah, Yeah, it was Carla Raines when he got back.
Charday Rion.
Well, didn't Rocky also go on the drive through the neighborhood with Ellis?
Mm-hmm. With Ellis and Davis. They both
Yeah.
took her.
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong, but I thought that Davis was saying that during the trial he had been transferred to
It said
homicide.
the question was at some point during the pendency of the investigation into
Okay.
Holtzclaw's activities was Gregory transferred to homicide. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, the last was Adara Gardner the last person, or
Yep. She was the last one in October.
You know, it seems very strange with this large of a case and all the work that had been done. Why the hell would they transfer Rocky in the middle of it? I mean,
we
before
have.
the trial.
I mean, I could see him. Okay, so Adara. When was Adara? Does anyone remember when Adara's interview was? Adaria? No, I
It
can't even
seems like
remember.
it was like in October, around October 19th or something like that.
Yeah,
That's a rough guess.
October.
it was October.
Tendency of the investigation.
Of the investigation, not the trial or the
Yeah,
prosecution.
right.
If he meant to say during the pendency of the trial or
Right.
prosecution. Did someone have oh, that's Jack's grandbaby, right?
No, it's my dog. I forgot I wasn't muted. Sorry. He's got his squeaky toy.
Oh, man. I don't know. This is just so messed up. And because I didn't know Daniel before this, and he was already in prison when I met him, I have so many questions about when I hear Scott Adams questioning the possibility of him actually taking her through the park, because I always feel like they parted ways after the contact between 17th and 18th Street on Highland. I don't think Sherry ever got into his car and he took her through the schoolyard. I think he carried on with his evening. But those aren't things that I can ask Daniel while he has appeals pending, because everything's recorded, everything can be twisted. um I always come across things I want to know, but it's really weird to not be able to have an open conversation with someone.
Do you know for sure that the visits are recorded, like the in-person visits?
I mean, they say they are, so I'm gonna assume that they are.
Okay.
But have I seen microphones or anything? No, I've looked for them and I don't see them. But
I've never seen one in a visit either, but again, I guess just lucky so far that well, we didn't say anything that they could twist.
hmm Hey, the other thing when they're talking about him not writing it down on his activity sheet. This is at the end of his shift. We do know from some emails that we've seen that Daniel had higher volume of activity, like by so much that once when a quarterly report of excuse me, officer activity was sent to the supervisors, they said, redo Holtzclaw because that can't be right, because it was so much more than any of the other officers. And then it was right. So my point is that it was my understanding that you had to have so many points during a shift, not every hour. But I think it was common for him to slack off recording things at the end of the shift because he had far exceeded his quota, I guess, if you want to call it that, of activity. I don't know. The other thing I wanted to talk about was how Kim Davis talks about the Varuna check. She used Varuna to find the information that she needed to locate the brother. She had a good phone number on him. And that's perfectly fine for her to use Varuna as an investigative tool. But if Daniel's looking people up on Varuna, then it's automatically nefarious. So, maybe based on what she believes, maybe we should just assume that she sexually assaulted Sherry Ellis's brother. On Varuna. All throughout the trial and depositions, you'll hear law enforcement officers that testified say how they use Varuna as an investigative tool, but Daniel can't use it as an investigative tool. That's just no.
Yeah. Adam should have used that, the fact that he wouldn't be able to find that information on Varuna about, if he had been reported. But he didn't. Maybe they hadn't made that connection yet.
I also like how Giger right away wanted Davis to set her use of Facebook apart from the way that Daniel used Facebook. Which,
right.
They are different, but he really needed to make that point, I guess, just because of the word Facebook. I don't know.
Exactly.
It felt weird.
I agree.
Trying to think of what else stood out. Yeah, I haven't read this testimony all the way through ever. Well,
It's pretty awful. That's all I got to say.
yeah. They all throughout this case, they, use the words like took her behind the building. Uh, is there a dead end? Then when he
Mhm.
exited on Miramar, if you turn and go this direction, then you come to Dead Man's Curve.
Yeah, make it
What
scary.
Dead
or
Man's Curve has nothing to do with this. This,
With this
or
case.
yeah.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then you go right by the bus barn. I mean,
Uh-huh.
they're
Through that
throwing
end.
all these things that they want to seem shady
Connect
to
the
try.
dots.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It's just interesting. Um, Scrolling through this document, but I think we've stopped and covered most of the things, and here we are at almost 3 hours, so we should probably just say our goodbyes and let the people get on out of here. What's coming up with you, Jack, this week? Oh,
Jack.
Jack. Oh,
Oh,
there he is.
damn. Now I'm unmuted. Damn it, I muted myself. I thought I was already
Were
muted.
you
Anyway,
talking?
yeah, I was talking, of course. We got this new filing from KZ, which was filed today. It's out for scientific testing, so we'll see what happens there. Um, so we got that. And then, of course, we'll be heading back on Saturday with Doc and Neverly and reading with the crew. I think he's got another part or two left on the new witnesses emerge, and then they'll be changing to another chapter. And then Sunday for open mic. Well, this depends. We'll see what happens between now and then, documentation wise about this new filing. But probably we're going to be going back into more queso dispatch calls.
Sounds good.
Yep.
So for any, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Okay, so for anyone who's listening to this on the replay and isn't sure exactly what Jack's talking about, Jack is a member of the Foul Play YouTube channel and Discord channel, and they cover the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases. So Kathleen Zellner is representing Stephen Avery, and she is the attorney out of Illinois who represented Daniel in the civil suit through most of the depositions. So go check them out. It's pretty interesting. They do a lot of great work over there on the Foul Play channel. Susan, what's up?
Oh, not too much. I've been following this Delphi crazy court proceedings. It's just insane. All the filings. It's just crazy. Talk about corruption. Oh my God. Withholding evidence with unbelievable what's going on there.
I
So,
need to catch up on that.
yeah, I really like Bob and Ali Mata, and he's been doing some lives with what's the other guy's name? Oh, shoot.
Jay. I know he did one with Jay.
What
What's he
channel
live?
is that? Is
Defense
that?
Diaries.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
Defense Diaries.
Oh, okay. All right.
And yeah, it's crazy.
All right.
And then I did, watch some of the guy that just got convicted, the Crowley, what's his name? School shooter's dad.
Crumley or something you said?
Crumley. Yeah. I was watching that, and then I don't know, just always something.
That's no doubt. All right, Sherri.
This was very interesting. Like you, Kay, I don't believe I've ever read the whole thing through. So it was frustrating, but interesting too. So thank you.
Sherri, don't you think that I just went brain dead? Don't you think that Katie did a
Going around.
fantastic job imitating Kim Davis?
Oh,
I
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Got her
It was
down
so
pat.
good. It's crazy.
You've got her down
Crazy good.
about as good as Susan has Kratz down.
Good Lord.
Your Honor, I just have to go to the bathroom and get my balls down. Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Oh
Thank
my
you,
God.
Judge. I love you, Judge.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
Sorry. Little comedic relief.
All right.
Yeah, I read this. I just say I read this a couple weeks ago, this whole part of the trial with Kim Davis. And so I was aware
All
what was
right.
coming.
Well, I'm gonna, if Rhonda's still with us, I'm gonna let her. I don't know if we know what's going on next week or not, since she's been going through some dental procedures, but whatever it'll be, we'll carry on with something. But what do you got, Rhonda?
Thanks, Kay. And thank you, Jack and Kay, for running the show tonight. You guys did excellent. Kay, I'm going to ask you if you can do our intro every week as we go live, because you did really well, and it's something I've never really done. I've never really made a a nice, easy flowing introduction. So thank you. That was really awesome. And thank you, Jack, for all of the scrolling and everything. I appreciate it.
Oh, anytime.
And,
You bet.
and of course, everybody for reading. You guys all did really good. And I'm just going to say I don't know what I have coming for next week. Theoretically, we should be starting the next accuser, I think, if following along in Bates's podcasts.
Is it Florine?
And it would be, I believe that would be Florine Mathis. But I don't know how I'm going to be feeling in the next few days. So
I was gonna say if you need to take a week off, then by all means take care of yourself.
Yeah, it'll either be a surprise or I'll just let all you guys come on and discuss, have like a Q&A or something. But
Cool.
We'll figure something out. But again, thank you guys all for stepping up and taking care of it for me. And thanks to everybody in the chat for being here. All of your comments were great and completely logical. So until next time, whenever that may be, peace out.